The Tennessee Titans had their first open practice of the year on Saturday, and it was won by the defense, led by rookie T'Vondre Sweat. I'll break down everything you need to know on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs and the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Tennessee Titans held their first open practice of the year on Saturday, and there were a ton of fireworks. It was a back and forth practice, but the defense definitely won the day, led by rookie T'Vondre Sweat. Also, I'll talk about the up and down day for the offense with Will Levis making some highlight throws, and also some offensive line panic happening after Saturday. I'll tell you why it's far too early for that. Before we get into all of it, though, do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, nearly 25 years as a Tennessee Titans fanatic, breaking down the X's and O's with you guys all year long. I've covered the team for Sports Illustrated. I've covered the team for USA Today, and I've been hosting the #1 Titans podcast in the world for the last 5 seasons. But with all that being said, we got to talk about T'Vondre Sweat, who was one of the standout performers from Saturday's practice open. It was an incredible experience. All the videos of practice flooding the timeline, all the transparency we're getting about who's playing where, who's lining up in certain spots, how certain players look early on. But T'Vondre Sweat is definitely where I want to start. And obviously, anytime I talk about T'Vondre Sweat, I'm going to get a ton of feedback, both good and bad. That's just the reality of the situation. But I've always promised that when T'Vondre Sweat gave us positive things to talk about, I was going to talk about him. And he got a sack at practice on Saturday. He also blew up a couple of plays. He occupied a double team when Jeffrey Simmons got a deflection. He was out there with Jeffrey Simmons, and they were definitely making things difficult on the offensive line. And all along, the idea of T'Vondre Sweat is to have somebody on the interior that can take up 2 blockers, that can use his size, that can use his power, that can use his fluidity and his speed for a guy his size to disrupt things up front. And I've said consistently throughout the offseason that I hope I'm wrong about T'Vondre Sweat, because the Tennessee Titans desperately need T'Vondre Sweat to be good. Not only was he their second-round pick in the draft, and you're counting on that player to be an impact player from day one, but also the Titans don't have a lot of talent on the interior defensive line, and that's something that I've harped about as well. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons is all-world on the interior defensive line, but Sebastian Joseph-Day is just a average-level starter in the NFL, a replacement-level starter. And then outside of that, other than T'Vondre Sweat, I don't think the Titans have a lot of NFL talent on their backup defensive line. So T'Vondre Sweat is going to be very, very important. He was out there as a starter with Jeffrey Simmons in some of those 4-man fronts, especially the 3rd and 6 drill that the Titans went through, which I'll talk about more as we get into the rest of the notes on practice. But Sweat made an impact out there. Okay, one good practice doesn't mean that he's going to be an all-pro. That's absolutely true. Just like I explained earlier that one bad practice or a couple of bad reps doesn't mean that he's a bust. But positive step, a good practice, and Sweat deserves his credit, and I'm going to give it to him when he earns it. So absolutely a good practice for T'Vondre Sweat, and Titans fans should be rejoicing that he's starting to take some positive steps forward, and hopefully we start to see that continue as we get further into training camp, into the preseason, and into the regular season. So good day for T'Vondre Sweat. Also, Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons just looks incredible. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life. I know that's an offseason trope that I like to laugh about, but as a guy who's I started doing the show the year Jeffrey Simmons was drafted and became a rookie. So I feel like Jeffrey Simmons is kind of my guy. Like, we've been riding this train together, and he looks incredible. He looks incredible, and he was playing well. Now, no pads on. So let me throw that caveat in before we move on anywhere. No pads on, which is very important to keep in mind, and I'll talk about that more when we talk about the offensive line panic that's kind of happening at the end of the show. But do also want to give some credit to Kenneth Murray. Kenneth Murray's been getting some, I don't want to say rave reviews, but definitely some praise. And he made some good plays at Saturday's practice. He knocked away a pass of Will Levis across the middle. He got into the backfield for a sack on a play that turned into a Will Levis interception, which we're going to talk about when we talk about the offense. But really, that play would have ended in a sack because Kenneth Murray was in the backfield. Making plays in coverage is really the thing that stood out to me. You know, making a few plays in coverage is important for Kenneth Murray. That's where he's really, really struggled throughout the beginning of his career. That's honestly my biggest concern about Kenneth Murray when he was signed and why I wasn't a super big fan of the signing. And look, 2 of the 3 moves this offseason, I didn't like the Kenneth Murray signing. I wasn't a huge fan of the Jamal Adams signing. And I didn't like the T'Vondre Sweat draft pick. Those were the 3 things that I didn't really like this offseason from the Titans. And I'm out front here. T'Vondre Sweat had a good day, and Kenneth Murray's looked pretty good the last 2 practices. So got to give credit where it's due, and hopefully I'm wrong about those players, and that would really help the Titans' defense be way better than maybe we even expect. Maybe we're talking about this offense getting better. The defense just needs to be pretty good. Maybe the defense is really good. And a guy like Kenneth Murray, who was a former first-round pick, and a guy like T'Vondre Sweat, who obviously has a lot of natural talent, if those guys do pan out this year, well, the Titans could really have something cooking. So it's obviously just one practice, the 3rd practice, no pads. We don't need to get ahead of ourselves here, but still like to hear positives rather than negatives, right? That's been my point all along with T'Vondre Sweat. I want to hear something to be positive about instead of negative things. And we got him today with Kenneth Murray and T'Vondre Sweat and, of course, Jeffrey Simmons. Also want to give some credit here to the Titans defensive backs. Again, Trey Avery did have an interception, the first interception for Will Levis of training camp. So you got to give him his credit there. So on that interception, it was a little wonky. It was a little strange. I'll break it down more when we talk about Will Levis next, but Trey Avery did come down with an interception. You got to give him his credit. No L'Jarius Sneed on some days because there's going to be management, although he did participate quite a bit in this practice in 7-on-7s and in 11-on-11. So Sneed was out there, but he's going to have his management days. And now we know that Chido Awuzie is going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. So that means those backup cornerbacks are really going to have an opportunity to get some reps. So a guy like Trey Avery coming out and having an interception, having some good coverage, that's important. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. got a shout out from Brian Callahan after practice, saying that he's playing inside and outside and they're putting a lot on his plate. And then Gabe Jeudy-Lawley also got a shout out from Brian Callahan after the practice. He called him sticky. He's been sticky. So the Gabe Jeudy-Lawley hype that we've been talking about on the show, it's not just hype, okay? Callahan took time to call him out. No call-outs for Caleb Farley, Robert Javier, other guys, and Anthony Kendall. No call-outs for those guys. So we got to pay attention when the coach is giving credit. So good stuff there from some of the Titans' young defensive backs who are going to be fighting for opportunities with the Awuzie injury, and then, of course, with L'Jarius Sneed's knee management that's going to be going on all season long. Big opportunity there, and looks like those guys are taking advantage of it. It's going to be a great competition to watch as we get into the preseason. But with that being said, the defense did win the day. Let's talk about the offense, who started out hot, but there were some ups and downs. So I'll explain why. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, I love sports. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious if you've been watching the show for any amount of time. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, basically end completely, we get fewer games. So when the sports stop sporting like they want it, like I want them to, like you want them to as well, I turn to FanDuel because FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. Heck, baseball season's still going. Now we're into the Olympics. I mean, there are still sports going on out there for you this summer. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So make sure that you head to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. I would also tell you this, while we're here talking about it, the Tennessee Titans getting 4.5 points on the road against the Bears week 1. I love that. So go check that out. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Titans fans, let's cap off or continue. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, okay? But we're going to continue today's breakdown of Titans open practice on Saturday. It was back together Saturday, as the NFL likes to call it. But excellent day for Tennessee Titans fans. Really fun atmosphere at the practice. Really cool environment online in the Titans community. It was just really fun to watch practice together and see all the clips and everything like that. And I got people DMing me stuff that they're seeing and blah, blah, blah. It was just a really great time, just really happy to have Titans football back. Defense had a great day. I gave credit to Tavondre Sweat, Kenneth Murray, some of the guys in the secondary. Now we got to talk about the offense because it was an up and down day for the offense. Brian Callahan, as I mentioned earlier, called it a back and forth day overall. And the reason it was back and forth, although the defense won, is because early on the offense looked excellent. I mean, the offense came out on fire in 7-on-7. There were some good plays in 11-on-11 as well. First things first, let's talk about this, though. First play, Will Levis throws a 70-yard bomb to Tony Pollard on a wheel route. I believe it was Roger McCreary in coverage, kind of gives him a little shake to the sideline and then gets up the sideline on the wheel route. Levis hits him perfectly in stride for a touchdown. So love seeing that. Levis came out 4 for 4. And his first 4 throws in 7-on-7 hit Hopkins over the middle. He hit Josh Wiley and Tyler Boyd a ton. We got to give our credit to the guys over the middle of the field. Josh Wiley was getting a ton of work, which is a continuation of what we've seen the first 2 days. Tyler Boyd on a ton of quick stuff. And not only was Levis doing a good job of hitting his targets over the middle of the field, also worth noting that Hopkins and Ridley did participate, but they definitely participated the least out of all of the major wide receivers. Okay, so the Titans were definitely being smart. Callahan even said Ridley had a little bit of an ankle, but he came back and played later, so no big deal. Callahan was really happy about the injury situation coming out of it. No real issues coming out of it, but you don't want to run down your 2 wide receivers who are close to 30 or over 30 in Hopkins' situation in some of these early practices. You know what I mean? So let them go out there, make a couple plays, show off for the fans, but we don't need to run them into the ground. So Wiley and Tyler Boyd were getting a ton of work over the middle of the field. Love to see that. That's where you want to see Levis really start to get more comfortable. A lot of quick underneath stuff as well to Tyler Boyd. And got to mention this, a ton of motion. Like pre-snap movement, post-snap movement. And Brian Callahan talked about it. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. As somebody who typically talks about how the Titans are the media mafia and they don't let us see any videos, and Mike Vrabel never told us anything, would never give us injury updates like we got on Cheeto or Calvin Ridley today, would never give us any information whatsoever. Brian Callahan basically looked at the cameras and said, yeah, we're going to do a ton of motion. That's a little sample of what you're going to see on Sundays. Like, he's just outright saying, yep, what you saw today, we're doing a lot of that. And Mike Vrabel never would have said anything like that. Now, again, I'll make the point that I made during the Vrabel tenure. Brian Callahan saying that out loud isn't going to make any team have a better chance of beating the Titans than they did before. All it does is give the fans some more information to get excited about. And I am excited about the amount of motion that we saw out there. Literally every play that we saw video of, there was motion. So I love seeing that. That's critical. Brian Callahan talked about how that's critical to getting guys open in the NFL as well. So just love all the things that we dreamed about when Brian Callahan was hired. Like, hey, this probably means this. This probably means this. Denard Wilson, this probably means this for the defense. We're seeing it. So love all of that. Now let's talk about some of the down. So there was a period where Levis went 0 for 4, where he threw his interception. It was not a good period for the offense. It was 3rd and 6. So they were doing situational football, 3rd and 6. And if you watch some of the plays, if you've seen some of them, wish I could share them with you. I had some people send me some videos. So the YouTube crowd, I was just going to play some of the highlights in the background I got sent, but just not allowed to do it, guys. I definitely do apologize. But anyways, It's 3rd and 6 only. I'm trying to find the right words to describe this. It's 3rd and 6 only, and the defense was bringing a ton of pressure. Like in all the videos that you see, the defense is really bringing pressure, bringing guys up the middle, blitzing linebackers, blitzing off the edge. So Denard Wilson was not holding back, and that's great for the offense. But there was an interception, again, by Trey Avery on the very first play. Calvin Ridley did throw it, did win deep, and Will Levis was a little late, and he underthrew it. But as I explained earlier, Kenneth Murray would have sacked Will Levis anyways. So basically, as it was described to me by my friend Will Lomas, who was in attendance, he was basically saying that the play was probably a sack, and Levis was late on the throw, and he basically just let it go because, he's sacked, you might as well throw it. And I was explaining this earlier in the week as well, last week for the first week of training camp, that the defense is getting sacks. Why are these quarterbacks 5 for 5, 6 for 6, and stuff like that? Well, because even though there's a sack and the quarterbacks are like, that would have been a sack, you still need to get the reps in, get the throws in, get the opportunities to the wide receivers and the defensive backs to make plays on the ball. So even though there's a sack, sometimes they don't blow the play dead. They just let the quarterback get rid of the ball so they can get, opportunities out of these reps. So Will Levis probably wouldn't have been able to throw that pass in the game anyways, because it would have been an immediate sack by the linebacker on the blitz. Then the next 2 plays were overthrows that were incompletions, but again, a ton of pressure on all 4 of these plays. And this is why I was giving credit to Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons earlier, because they were making plays. And then finally, Levis had to run for his life on the last play and just throw it away. So a down sequence. So Levis had some incredible throws. He started out super hot, 7-on-7s, hitting guys. Once we introduced the defensive line, the offensive line struggled a little bit, allowed a lot of pressure. Levis didn't look quite as good. So it's all connected there. So the context is important. Before I move on, I do want to give credit to Malik Willis. So I have been a Malik Willis detractor, I guess I would say, ever since Josh Dobbs got put in over him in Malik's rookie year. I thought from that moment on, I'm like, okay, if Malik had any chance at all to be a good player, there's no way they would have got Josh Dobbs off the street and given him an opportunity instead of Malik. They would have let Malik get those valuable opportunities. So I admit that is the moment when I stopped believing in Malik Willis. But he was fantastic out there on Saturday. I mean, he was getting rave reviews from he was throwing dots. One of them got dropped, but it was a beautiful pass dropped in the bucket to Bryce Oliver, the undrafted free agent. He'll be one of the first guys going if the Titans do any churn at wide receiver. Now, he did play with the 3rd string. So I know that there are going to be people in the comments who are like, yeah, against 3rd stringers, classic. But I've seen Malik Willis play against 3rd stringers before and not look as good as he looked on Saturday. So you got to give credit where it's due. Malik made a lot of plays. He tucked and run on a couple, hit a lot of good passes. I mean, there we go. If Malik Willis were to beat out Mason Rudolph, I'll buy Malik Willis's jersey. So I know my boy Callahan out there, Eric Callahan, as I like to call you. You'll probably clip that one. There will be people who clip them. But yeah, if Malik Willis is the backup quarterback over Mason Rudolph, or if Mason Rudolph doesn't make the team and Malik Willis does, something crazy like that. But I'll say if Malik Willis is QB2 on the depth chart over Mason Rudolph to start the year, I will buy Malik Willis's jersey. So he deserves that from me. Deserves his credit. Great practice from Malik Willis. I believe it was Easton Freeze. I got Easton, who said that it was maybe Malik Willis's best practice as a Tennessee Titan, period, ever. So again, got to give Malik Willis his credit where it's due. A great practice. Let's see if we can continue that into the preseason games. I'm excited to watch him and see how much he's developed. He's definitely with better quarterback development right now with Brian Callahan than he was ever in his career so far. So got to keep that in mind. But with that being said, look, the offensive line struggled, but everyone's got to relax. Before I tell you why, though, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. And it's summertime. It's a great time to go catch an MLB game. Just saying. Perfect time. But you got to buy your tickets on Game Time, like I have. Reds tickets, Titans tickets, Lakers tickets, Fever tickets, Drake tickets. I mean, I bought everything on Game Time. the features, man. You get all-in prices, so you actually know what you're paying when you look at the tickets. You get a panoramic view, what it's going to look like from your seat, so you actually know what you're going to see when you sit down. And you get the game time guarantee, making sure that you pay the lowest price possible for the tickets. I mean, you got to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets specifically with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Titans fans, now let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down Saturday's open practice. I called it a scrimmage on the thumbnail, and it's not quite a scrimmage, if we're honest. You know, it's not literally 11 on 11 the whole time, but they did so much 7 on 7. They did so much 11 on 11, and that's exactly what everybody wanted to see. So called it a scrimmage, not really a scrimmage, but you guys understand what I'm saying. We're talking about, you know, team versus team activities. Even though they did do individual warm-ups and things like that. But we talked about the defense, gave T'Vondre Sweat and Kenneth Murray a little bit of love. Some of the defensive backs, and of course, always Jeffrey Simmons, my favorite player on the team. And then we gave the offense their due credit for the things good that happened. I mean, that 70-yard bomb to Tony Pollard from Will Levis was just absolutely electric. Absolutely amazing. But really, a lot of the concern, if there's any concern from fans and from just the community in general, coming out is for the offensive line. And I even tweeted out during kind of the moment when I was seeing a lot of concern. And I was like, look, guys, can we wait until we put pads on before we start to freak out about the offensive line? Like, can we at least do that? Can we at least wait for pads? Like, just, I'm not out here to tell anybody that the offensive line is going to be good and that it won't be bad. But we can't start being freaking out about that now. The offensive linemen don't even have pads on. And let me just say this. If you've ever played football, specifically high school level and above, when you really start doing a lot of scout team stuff, have you ever had that guy on scout team who goes overboard? He's basically Rudy. You know what I mean? Like, he knows the play, and he still goes right to the spot to disrupt the play so that he looks good. Now, look, I'm not saying that you don't need guys who go hard on scout team in practice. All right, you do. But there is a difference between guys going hard and guys basically cheating the play to make themselves look good. The whole point of scout team is you're going to know what the offense is running because they're running the plays that they're working on. You're on the team. You know what they're practicing. The point is to give them a look as if you were the defense of the other team, not act like you know the play. You're not helping the offense by any means. So there's a difference between those two things. Well, let me just say that I felt like, and a couple of people who I talked to said today the defensive line was doing a lot of, hey, we know that you can't really block us because we don't have pads on, so we're just going to get in and look good. All right, which is fine. Okay, great. But let me just say, without pads, an offensive line versus defensive line interaction, who is the advantage? To me, it's the defensive line. Because the defensive line are typically quicker, more athletic guys, where the offensive line are usually stronger, more sturdy guys. So when you don't have your pads on, and especially picking up stunts and blitzes from the second level like the Titans defense was doing with linebackers and stuff, like, you got to put a shoulder into a guy to stop him on a blitz. You can't do that without pads. So without having pads on, there is already, and let me just say this, players don't play without pads on exactly like they would with pads on. You know what I mean? It's not like the only difference between what they're doing is, oh, they just don't have their pads on. Like, there are literal things that guys are just not going to do when they don't have the pads on that they would do if they did. So I'm not trying to tamp down how good the defense's day was, but I am trying to tamp down the panic for the offensive line. Can we get pads on? And also, let me just say this, outside of like the circumstantial stuff from Saturday specifically, this is a brand new offensive line, brand new offensive system, brand new offensive line coach, 4 brand new starters. Also, starting on the offensive line right now is Sadiq Charles at right guard and John Ojukwu at right tackle. We can get as excited as we want, and there are people out there who are just like so excited that John Ojukwu is getting this opportunity, and good luck to him. But if John Ojukwu is starting at right tackle, that's not good. That's not good. It's not good. And look, I'll be honest. Basically, no one that is available to play right tackle to me would make me feel more certain. I'm going to be skeptical no matter what because I don't think there's a good player there. That's why I was hoping the Titans would go out and, sign a free agent earlier in the offseason to address one of the tackle positions. I wanted the Titans to sign one free agent offensive tackle that I thought could be a legit starter. I liked, not Trent Williams, Jonah Williams. We talked about even giving a swing on Mekhi Becton. George Fant, I was still hoping for possibly getting an opportunity. Someone signed in Seattle. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, I wanted the Titans to go out and take a chance on a veteran right tackle because I was still worried that if they tried to fill that internally or with another rookie, 2 rookie offensive tackles, it would be worrisome. So I'm not going to say that you shouldn't have any concern about the offensive line, but the panic, like local Nashville radio host Jared Stillman, who's known for being negative about things, reputationally at least speaking. I think he still does a great job with his radio show. You know what I mean? Like, good job. But he replied to one of my tweets or retweeted me and basically said, no, last year, Titans coaches said the same thing. Wait till we get pads on about the O-line, and the O-line was bad. Bad is just bad. Look, I'm not going to tell you that, there's no chance they're going to be bad. I'm just saying without the pads on and with how new everything is circumstantially for the Titans, I think it's a little too early to be as panicked as maybe some people are and saying, no, bad is bad, and already declaring that the offensive line is bad. It's just a little too early for that. Plus, one of your best players is a rookie. Your other best player is a second-year player who are going to be going through their own growing pains anyway, just as young players. It may take into the middle of the season for the Titans offensive line to get to where we hope they could be right away. You know what I mean? So I'm just not going to sit here and panic already, especially with the pad set to come on next week. Let's see how they roll in that. But they do need to play in the preseason games, which Brian Callahan said they are going to do. So you can see why. But with that being said, I think that is everything that I wanted to cover here. Yep. That's about it. Really fun practice. Football is so back, man. We're just absolutely so back. So excited. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.